In today's video, I want to dive a little bit deeper into the extended entity info box. We covered this somewhat in depth in the cut listing video, but I want to give you a little more depth on some of the other tabs and features of it. And to access this, we go under our window and extended entity info. So this is a window that's provided by CabWriter. Actually, more specifically, it's provided by Cutlass Bridge, which is installed along with CabWriter and is a companion. Its job in life is to allow us to add attributes to our components or parts in our model that we can use to export all of the proper information to the cut list, as shown in the cut listing video. But I want to show you a couple more features of it and make sure that you fully understand how this works. So you can see there's nothing showing in here because we don't have any part selected in our model. So if we select a part, for example, this is a top rail on the refrigerator cabinet, and you'll see that we don't have a component number assigned. I showed this in the cut list video as well, but that's because we haven't assigned any part numbers to these cabinets yet. And if we go to our setup tab here, setup tab, component numbering here. The user can add the part numbers, so we can manually put the part numbers into this field here, or Cutlass Bridge could do it, or CabWriter could do it. And what's defaulted here is CabWriter doing the part numbering. So that allows CabWriter to do a methodical part numbering of all the components once we finish our model and choose to do that. So if I close this and go up to File, CabWriter, renumber all cabinets, I get an error here because this part over here I pulled in from another model and didn't properly name it, so CabWriter doesn't fully understand that part. We're going to cover renaming and numbering and setting up custom components in another video, so I'm going to ignore that for now. But I believe we should have the rest of our parts numbered. Yes. So you can see this. What this is saying is C9 or cabinet 9, part number 13. So it's easy by looking at the part number to tell what cabinet it came from, and then you can see what part number. So if we go over here, this is C5, cabinet 5. Over here, we're cabinet 11, and so on. So the numbering restarts from part number 1 within each cabinet. And it's also showing that in the subassembly. So how you decode this subassembly is C11, upper, D is for door, part number 1. Or, sorry, box number 1 of this cabinet. So if I have a multi-box cabinet down here, we can see that, and if I just show the carcasses, for example, I choose this part here, I'm seeing it's cabinet 1, part number 6, subassembly C1, cabinet 1, lower box number 1. If I choose this one, you can see that's lower box number 2. So that's pretty easy to tell by just looking at the subassembly what that part belongs to, and then you can see its part number up here. If we go back to our setup page, a couple other things that we can see here is Cutlass Bridge numbering. We can either do that numerically or alphabetically. So if Cutlass Bridge is doing the numbering, it can either be a numeric part number or an alphabetical part number. We typically don't do this if we're within CabWriter. We let CabWriter take care of all the numbering. For the info column, you can just have it give a part's width. You can have the part, well, this would be width or length or thickness. I'll show you how this goes on with the cut list in a second. It can either be with no additional information. It can show you the oversizing or difference from its final size by a relative number like minus a half an inch, or the width with its final size listed in parentheses. So let me show you what that means. If I go to the Excel here, you can see that in the info box what it says is, for this part for example, the width that's shown over here is 2 1/16, but its final width is 1.5 inches. So what it's telling me is that the width is oversized by plus 1.5 inches, and the thickness is oversized by, sorry, it's not oversized by 1.5 inches, it's actually oversized by 9/16. Its final size is 1.5 inches, and its final size is 13/16 here. Whereas you can see it's 27/32 here. If you watch the cut list video, you can see we talk about oversizing parts, and that's also here in the extended entity info under attributes. For example, this one, you can see resize the length by 1/4 inch. So if you need to leave that oversized for, say, to put edge banding on it and then to cut it to its final length later, you would get an oversized dimension on the cut list of 1/4 inch bigger than the final size. So if we go back over to our Excel here, these columns are the listed size, and these are the final sizes over here. So they differ in some cases based on what is put in the extended entity info box for thickness, width, and length. And the info column is just another indicator that my thickness and width are oversized. And I can also see it over here. So it just gives me something when I'm looking at my cut list that indicates, oh, just remember that the thickness and width here happen to be oversized. And that is these parameters right here. So notice our thickness is not oversized, our width is, and our length is. So that would show up on the cut list that way. And under setup, you can indicate whether we wanted to show the final size or show the difference or don't show anything at all. And then the description can be just plain old left side, or left side and then in brackets here indicating that's a side. That's a little bit redundant, so we typically don't pick that. And then the subassembly column can either be this subassembly here or the layer name that the part is on. So that would be this column in the spreadsheet right here, subassembly. Can either be the subassembly, which is what we have here, or the layer name. So you might want the layer name just to be able to sort by all base box parts, for example. Especially since this information is always repeated in the description. So it's a little bit redundant to have it here, but that's your choice. So further under the setup, initialize attributes. That's something you don't necessarily want to do after CabWriter has done all of its work, because what this would do would reinitialize all the attributes on all the parts in the model back to default, which is basically nothing. So you would lose all the information that CabWriter puts in. Every time CabWriter draws a part, it puts in the appropriate information into the attributes. So you don't necessarily want to blow those away. So I would stay away from this guy. And then you can open the user's guide for cut list bridge from here. If we go to columns, this selects the columns that you want to show in your cut list and what order to show them. If you are going to be exporting the cut list bridge, cut list FX, the program, you'll want to keep these in the default order here because that's the order that it expects. If not, you got to do some juggling in Cutlass Plus to match these columns up. So I wouldn't necessarily change that. And then under lists, lists are here where we set up our materials. So for example, I can add and remove things to the list. So if I wanted to, here's my current list of rough lumber, and I could remove one from there, or I could add one here. Let's add something like balsa wood. I would add it, and then it should show up right here in the list under balsa. So I also have a list for my dimension lumber, which I don't use all that much, and my sheet goods. So you can see the various sheet goods we have here. And this list is used if we go into our attributes here, when we're picking our materials for our project, those are where those lists come in. Also, if you put the same list into Cutlass Plus FX, it'll automatically match up to the proper material when you import it into Cutlass Plus. So by matching those two lists up, you get an automatic matchup when you go into Cutlass Plus. So you can manage those lists from the extended entity info box on the lists page. You can back up a list and restore a list to disk if you want. Or you can create a list from Cutlass Plus. So if you export your raw material sizes and prices file to this particular path under your plugins, and then hit create list, it'll pull it back in. So you can keep your lists in sync that way as well. And then back to the attributes page. This again we covered somewhat in depth in the cut list video, but if this is a part that needs to go to the cut list, it needs a component number or part number and a subassembly. You can add a manual tag to this part if you want. You can type in something like, what I'll often do is, I'll go back to our list here. I've got two mitered parts here that I like to get out of the same piece of wood. So what I could do is put a tag here and put GM1 on that part and GM1 on this part. And what that'll do is that'll show up in the tags column over here on the parts list, and they'll both say GM1 for grain match 1. So I want to match the grain between those two parts. And then these two, I would go and I could select both of them at the same time. And I can put a tag on there that says GM2. And so now I've got GM1 for these guys and GM2 for these guys. So on my parts list, I'll start showing these matched pairs. Grain match 1, grain match 2, so I know to keep those parts together. You can use that for anything you want. There's also a notes column that you can fill in a note, and that'll show up in Cutlist Bridge. Sorry, not Cutlist Bridge, but Cutlist Plus FX. And it'll show up in this column on your notes column. So you can add anything you want in there. That's a free-form column. Otherwise, if it is a milled part, you got to tell that what the material type is, in this case rough lumber, and the material name maple. You would pull that down from the list. Does this part have edge banding? And you have to read the Cutlass Plus FX manual because they have some specific formatting for edge banding so that it can match up within their program and do some stuff for you. You can hit can rotate, which also is communicating to Cutlass Plus FX as to whether that part can be rotated when it's optimized. If it's a sheet good, you typically use that. and swap length and width. That will force you to be able to force swapping the length and width. So in other words, it'll export the length as the width and the width as the length, so that it essentially gets rotated on the in the cut list and on any plywood optimizations that Cut List Plus may be doing. Now, if you hit Cabinetry Sizemode, this allows you to do this resizing I talked about. You can add thickness, width, or length to that part, and this auto swap is only for carcass parts. If auto swap is checked, you tell it what type of a component this is, top, side, shelf, bottom, or back, and Cut List Bridge will know which way to run the grain by choosing the length properly. So let me clarify that. When we build cabinets, our grain runs this direction around these parts, and this way on the shelf, and up and down on the back. So Cut List Plus automatically assumes that the length is running with the grain when it does its plywood optimization, and often CNC programs do the same. So we want to make sure that the length is going with the grain, even if the length is shorter than the width, so that everything comes out right with our plywood optimizations. So Cut List Bridge will automatically swap the length and width if it detects this, if it knows what this part is, a back, a shelf, and so on. It'll do the right thing so that it comes out properly on our DXF files and the Cut List Plus and our cut sheet or cut list. So but you don't typically have to worry about this because Cut List Bridge, CabWriter does all this for you when it creates the part. If you were to create your own part, you would have to set all this up yourself. And we have a tool for that, and we're going to have another video on that in the future. And that's what this CabWriter Protected is. If you drew your own part, or you modified this part, for example, and you wanted CabWriter to leave it alone when it redrew the cabinet, you would hit CabWriter Protected, and when the cabinet got redrawn, it wouldn't touch that part. So if you did something really custom to it, that would be a good way to make sure that it doesn't get blown away when CabWriter redraws it. So that's pretty much all the functions of the extended entity info box, and that's all for this video.